Jennifer Armstrong. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement in the Annual Fund, and I am going to hand off tonight's program to Judy Hogfeld from the class of 1975, and she served on the reunion committee and is the brains and inspiration behind this event. So,
Judy.
Thank you for coming. This is the storytelling portion of the evening, and I'm encouraging anyone who has something that they would like to share, whether it's prepared or spontaneous, to feel free to do so. A couple of people have prepared stories for tonight. I am one of them. I think Bill is another. Is there anyone else who I should have on my list? But we will welcome any kind of participation that you would like to contribute. So. I've been participating in storytelling events in my area. I'm from Lamont, Illinois, and I started telling stories in Lockport, Illinois a couple of years ago, and I discovered that people love to hear other people's stories. They love that face-to-face connection, and I think we're kind of tired of screens and sometimes even of paper. We need to have that human interaction, and it's people's stories that really help us to connect with each other as human beings. So when I go to these storytelling events, I'm always amazed that it is standing room only. And if you don't get there early, it's a problem because these tend to be really, really popular events. So I was asked by the committee if I would put together a storytelling event for tonight, so that's what we're doing. So I think we will go ahead, and if you would like to begin for us, and then we will.
Great, thanks.
Bill Pyatt, class of 75. I was a biology major. I was a redhead back then, and freshman year in Fulton Hall. And so the ATO house had a big imprint on I started at Monmouth College. And recently, one of my colleagues, Cindy Jones, who's a United Methodist pastor, told me about the 4 years her father was the pastor at First Methodist Church in Monmouth. In the summer of '67, First Methodist Church was going to have a new associate pastor, and the senior pastor and his family were to move out of the old parsonage into a new home that was being donated to the church. At the last minute, the people who owned the home they were going to donate said, "We really can't move out until August, so you need to find some place for your family to live for 2 months." And someone from the college, maybe Dave Allison, she wasn't sure who it was, said, "Why don't you have your family live in the ATO house? It won't be used." And so Cindy says, the second week of June, she and the three sisters, mom and dad, moved to the ATO house. Her parents lived in what was the house mother's apartment on this level, and she and her sisters had the full run of the dormitory where there were 20 beds set up, and they could pretend as if they were testing a bed out each night. They were in here about 2 weeks. On a Friday night, it was 10-ish or so, they'd all gone to bed. And suddenly, through one of the windows, near one of the drain pipes, 2 ATO alumni who had been imbibing refreshments in the area decided they were too drunk to drive home. They were just going to stop over at the ATO house. And they knew the window that was never locked, so they could get in the house and crash. So they discovered their dexterity was limited. So they stumbled through the window and landed on one of the bunk beds. And the girls screamed. And they began to express themselves in figurative language that football players and apparently ATOs had learned. And her dad came rushing upstairs to say, in effect, "What's up, boys?" We're ATOs and we need a place to stay tonight. Well, men, you can't stay here. This is the Methodist parsonage. No, it's not. It's the ATO house. She doesn't recall exactly how her dad got them out of the house, but she loves to tell the story of how she lived one summer in the ATO house at Monmouth College. And so this room is filled with ATO stories and at least one Methodist church story. Thanks for listening.
I feel very unprepared for this tonight.
I'm looking forward to it.
I spent all of my Monmouth years feeling unprepared. It's like that recurring dream of showing up for class and finding out that there's an exam that you haven't studied for. That feeling of being unprepared plagued me from the start. Shortly after arriving on campus, I rode my bike through Monmouth Park only to realize that I had a flat tire on my bike. I would have to walk. I should have filled it with air before I left, but like I said, I was unprepared. I would have to walk my bike back to campus, and I was wearing the wrong shoes. The shortest route was to cut through a grassy area over the top of a hill, and then to descend into a wooded area. As I reached the top of the hill, and I looked down, I was startled by what I saw. All of the trees were covered in monarch butterflies. Thousands of them. They took my breath away, but there they were. Too many to count, and too fragile to hold. I wasn't prepared for that. When I arrived on campus freshman year, I'd spent all summer planning my college wardrobe, which consisted of turtleneck sweaters, denim jeans, heavy wool coat, and of course, the all-important knee-high leather boots. Now, if you were here freshman year, 1971, you will remember that it was in the upper 90s for the first 3 weeks.
That's right.
So all of my meticulous planning and stitching and shopping, I had nothing to wear. Once again, I was unprepared and wearing the wrong shoes. Those first few weeks, there were so many things that I was unprepared for. There were parties in frat houses with boys and beer. All things that I knew nothing about. There were all-night dorm room parties where we solved all of the problems of the world and then ate cold pizza for breakfast before dozing through that 8 a.m. class. There were professors who were both knowledgeable and approachable, qualities unheard of in my draft-deferred high school teachers. And no one knew me. My world was a blank slate. I was a blank canvas, and I was a virgin. I came from one of those families where at the age of 13 you were handed a booklet entitled Becoming a Woman, and then later asked if you had any questions. I didn't. So that was the extent of my sex education. So when a male friend and I were casually watching TV, now fully clothed, in his dorm room in Fulton Hall, just right over there, companionably reclined on his bed, I complained that his belt buckle was sticking me in the back. If you think that's my belt buckle, he whispered into my ear, you're even more naive than I thought. I didn't date in high school. I was too busy training as a figure skater and performing in ice shows. My mother had sent me off to college well-trained in double axels, but unprepared to deal with men, boys, whatever. Sex. I wasn't prepared for that. Alice Francis was my roommate. No one could be prepared for meeting Alice Francis's mother, her Italian mother. Mrs. Francis fully engulfed me in a bear hug like this, while loudly proclaiming, "You must be Alice's roommate. I'm so glad to meet you. We're going to be great friends." And I was like, who is this woman? And why is she hugging me?
Yeah.
I had just said goodbye to my own mother, my own stiff-faced mother, with an awkward handshake in the parking lot. Goodbye. Be good. Right home. So Mrs. Francis was indeed a mystery, but not for long. She called our room every Sunday morning at precisely 8 a.m. Sorry, you'll have to talk to me, Mrs. Francis. Alice isn't here. She's already left. Mumbling something about going to Mass. I think.
Yeah.
Alice. God bless her for taking care of her mom until her mom's recent passing. Best roomie ever. And Alice, I'll always be your cover girl. Now, my sophomore year, I spent in a foreign studies program at the University of Puerto Rico. There was horrible civil and political unrest there at the time, and a great deal of anti-American sentiment. I was thrust into situations that were beyond my ability to cope. I wasn't prepared for any of that. This confusion made me ripe for proselytizing by a religious cult. Now, I'd never heard of a religious cult. They promised answers to all of my existential questions. I had been a church-going child. So the opportunity to do something nice for Jesus made sense to me until it didn't. So I left for home, a return to sanity, and a return to Monmouth campus. But the damage had been done. That experience changed everything. It colored all of my decisions, and it caused me to make some questionable ones. So I got married senior year. I wasn't prepared for that. Oh, incidentally, I got unmarried 31 years later. I'm a slow learner. It always takes me a while to figure things out. But while I'm revealing secrets, you may not know that it was my job to unlock the Hughes Library by 7 a.m. most mornings. And that meant that I experienced a miracle that few Monmouth College students have ever seen: sunrise over Monmouth campus. Not to mention a few disheveled walk of shamers who they were revealed in their solitary slink across campus. But in fact, the quiet Hughes Library became my refuge. And also, I now confess, the sight of a silent, almost secret relationship with a kind, endlessly patient older man by the name of Mr. Howgie. Mr. Howgie taught me the skill of card catalog filing, a skill that helped me pay the bills in grad school, where for 3 years I filed card catalog cards at the Regenstein Library at the University of Chicago. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howgie. Because of you, I was prepared for something. Though, with the advent of computers, this skill quickly became obsolete. And speaking of computers and stuff obsolete, do you remember the first computer that took up an entire lower level of McMichael Academic Hall? I remember separating data using punch cards and long rods, and then inputting that data into a computer that talked to another computer somewhere up in the sky, and then days later, the first computer would then spit out the results into an infinite roll of printer paper, the kind with the little holes on the edges, and then it was in a code that could only be deciphered using a special computer language that I had to learn. So, were any of us prepared for that? Or for the amazing technology that followed? I wasn't. And at what point did you realize that the mindless square is actually a circle? That the Wells elevator will not get you to the 3rd floor of New Mike? That Pretty Rocks 101 was not an intro to geology course for athletes that met on the football field? And that the sound of 5 was not the bell announcing the start of dinner? Did any of those things take you by surprise? And from our conversation at dinner tonight, did Dean Dumont maybe have some of the answers? Did any of you survive Dr. Hastings' semester exam for human thought and memory, which consisted of one question? What is the phone number of the White House? It was buried in a photo caption, chapter 7, page 154. And I knew it. Everyone else was unprepared. But I was not prepared in May of 1975 to be handed a thick white envelope from my Spanish professor, Edenia Guillermo, with an engraved invitation from Queen Juliana of the Netherlands to attend the royal wedding of her daughter, Princess Christiana, to Guillermo's son. I couldn't go. I had just gotten married myself, and I couldn't afford the airfare. And besides, I had all the wrong shoes. I wish I knew what happened to that amazing invitation. Like so many things in life, lost in the shuffle. Lost. I was not prepared for Hunk Anderson. I thought he was crass, rude, disrespectful, and a little bit smelly the winter he spent sleeping in his truck as some kind of protest to Dan Bering. I think that was what it was all about. I was never
That was
quite
one of the
sure.
excuses he gave.
That was one of the excuses he gave. When Hunk would slam down his cafeteria tray at our table and then begin spewing whatever it was he was raging about that day, I would quietly pick up my tray and move to the next table. But 30 years later, when I was deep in the throes of the divorce from hell, I became dangerously depressed. It was Hunk Anderson who emailed me repeatedly to keep me going. He couldn't call because his voice had been lost to throat cancer. But he could still type up a storm, even at 3 a.m. I still have those emails. If you can make it through 1 minute, he typed, you can make it through the next. Just keep making it through 1 minute at a time. Cancer took Hunk's voice away, but not his passion. I wasn't prepared for his passing. During those Monmouth years, so many things took my breath away. Snow-draped Wallace Hall, football games on crisp fall mornings, graduation to the stately drone of bagpipes, steak night. And like those monarch butterflies who startled me that day in Monmouth Park, I wasn't prepared for any of it. Thousands of memories, too many to count, and too fragile to hold. And here I am again, with a check air pressure alert on my tires in my car, a sleeveless top, and what I really need is a turtleneck, I think, and still wearing the wrong shoes. Someday, I'm going to be prepared, just not today. We have a roving mic, we have a stationary mic. We got you all warmed up now. So if anyone would like, do you want to come up? Do you want to mic? We've got lots, everybody's got stories, so please, tell us yours.
Tell us one of yours. Yeah.
Hi, I'm David Bicklin, also known as Blanche's husband, and at least where I'm from is where I'm known as Blanche's husband. I live in Hartford, Connecticut, and that's where most of the people seem to know me as Blanche's husband. I graduated in '65, long before some of the good stories I heard tonight occurred, such as the computer. We didn't have a computer. We had something called a slide rule. We had to get up at 7 in the morning, take a 7 o'clock slide rule class, so we could learn to facilitate the slide rule. Wendell Shulman? Got it. So we could learn. I was a chemistry major. I learned to facilitate, move that slide rule across much quicker and not waste so much time. But that's not that. I think I have my slide rule still. I haven't used it in several years. Don't need to use it.
Dr. Thiessen was rigid on that. That's the first thing. You couldn't be a chemist without knowing how to use the slide rule.
Absolutely. Well, of course, and you couldn't do physics. You couldn't do math. All kinds of things you couldn't do without doing the slide. You had to do it well, and that's why you went to a slide rule class. No credit for it. Just gave you some more better ideas on how to do it. And so Dr. Thiessen, you remind me of him. Dr. Thiessen had, when I first came here, had monitors out in the cornfields that were surrounding Monmouth. And he was monitoring radiation fallout from nuclear testing. And he would then, because there's a program, we were doing above ground nuclear testing, and so there's lots of strontium-90 that was getting into the cows, and if they got into the cows, they would get into the milk, and they'd get into the kids, and bone cancer was highly likely. So he was monitoring that for the federal government, and I then talked to Dr. Davis, anyway, another professor later on, to ask if he recalled that. And he said he recalled a little bit, but he just remember one time that Dr. Thiessen called into DC to give his readings, and he was so excited he'd gotten all this good information. So on that, and ultimately that led, I'm not sure that we had a great deal to do with it, might have, but it led to the test ban treaty, so we no longer test nuclear weapons above ground, so we don't get so much strontium 90 into the atmosphere. Sunrises. I was a SIG-Up, and the SIG-Up, the house we had is now gone. But the SIG-Ups we had, about 20 of the brothers could live in the house. Is that right, Bill?
24, actually.
Who's counting? But who's counting? Is that
20 or
right?
24.
Yeah.
Was that illegally?
No, I don't. In fact, the fire marshal's in charge of that. We couldn't have that many because we slept. We had so little room downstairs. No one could sleep downstairs, but we all slept upstairs in the attic, in bunk beds in the attic. And the way the fire marshal allowed us to have that kind of concentration of very smart, intelligent men, we had to have the windows open. And so in the wintertime, occasionally it gets below 32 here in Monmouth. And so it had blown snow and cold air, and sometimes a few of the brothers would wake up with snow on their sleeping bag. If you're really smart, you got an electric sleeping bag. You got an electric blanket. And you go upstairs about 10 o'clock at night, and you turn it on so your bed was warm enough to get into and not freeze. Well, we had a system, so we didn't have alarm clocks going off all morning long. I think we had called a wake up, and the pledges usually had to do this. I think it started at 6:30, and you had to sign up on a sheet, 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock, and maybe to 7:30. And so your job was to make sure, so we were up, unlike I was hearing here, at least some of the pledges were up before sunrise in Monmouth. And so the standard was awake, feet on the floor, and then sure out of bed. So when you went to wake somebody up, you had to mark on the calendar what you wanted to have done. You wanted to be wakened, feet on the floor, and sure out of bed. And
Or you were in trouble.
that's exactly right. Thank you, Whitlow. And so, some guys put in all three. At 6:30 they were waking up, and at 7 o'clock they wanted feet on the floor, and at 7:15 they had to be sure out of bed. So, that was the job of the pledges. Because we didn't have enough room for safe places to sleep at that time. And so, I'm going to mention something about. Dr. Thiessen was a piece of work, but no, this is great. Great. After here, I went to law school at the University of Virginia, and then was the head of the Law Revision Commission in the state of Connecticut for most of my career. And my office was in the state capitol building, and the governor's office was on the 2nd floor, and my office was on the 5th floor. And how I looked at it, I had a higher office in the state than that. Thank you. May I finish? I forgot to mention little Goldsboro. Some people here don't recall, but the gymnasium we had, the old gymnasium we had, was a very nice gymnasium. It's not a little small, but it worked okay. Below it was a swimming pool. Below that was a running track with cinders. And so, and there's a weight room. The weight room had number 10 cans, empty number 10 cans filled with cement, attached to a pole, one over here. And that was the weights we used to lift weights down there. In the weight room down on the cinder track of the gym. You go up to the swimming pool, and Bill and I know this very well because he dove one year, and then I was a diver the next year. The ceiling was so low, when you bounced, you touched the floor of the basketball court. So they put it in a very tight diving board. Very stiff. It's called a buckboard. It barely moved at all. You bounce on it really hard, and you might be able to touch the sitting up there. But so Bill dove one year, and I dove. Each year there was a better diver than either one of us. But that person always would get first place, and then we'd come in third, I think. What would happen is these good divers from the other schools that were used to boards that flex that much would come up. They were scared to death coming into Monmouth. They're afraid they'd hit their heads on the ceiling up there, and so we could all beat them. Bill and I could each beat them and knock them into second place, third place, or fourth place in our dual meets with them. So we now, I think, have improved our physical facilities in a magnificent way. But in those days, we had home-coated fans in a way that was hard to imagine elsewhere. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
My name is Andy Kerr, class of 1973, and I never swam, nor did I dive. I did play racquetball in that court down there, which was dangerous, just crawling into it. But I'm here to bring you forward into the 60s. Lively time on this campus. Sadly, a time when the Seagup House was now rubble, which comes into the story later I'm a member of Zeta Beta Tau, very proud member of Phi Epsilon Phi, which is the last founded fraternity on this campus in April of 1968. There was no place for us to be, so they put us in the Manor House, which was authorized for 8 students. Our
We had that on
16,
just one floor.
our 16 students, our first year, had a wonderful time, and we managed to get it up to 20 if you include Steve Tarkow, who spent a semester in the attic after he flunked out. But we wouldn't let him leave campus. But the Manor House was absolutely, for those of you who haven't been there, it has been re-envisioned as the alumni house and cleaned up tremendously. But you could still go down to the basement and see the coal bin where Tim Bath spent 3 years with his girlfriend. But I digress. What I want to talk about is parties on this campus. And I had a very good friend of mine who went to Arizona State, and I was talking to him one Christmas and asking him, he was a Phi Delta actually, and I asked him about the parties they would have out in the desert. And he would talk about this great spring party they had where they would bring in sand, they would do all sorts of things. And it got me thinking, well, ZBT, we ought to have a ZB Tahiti. So in the spring of 1973, we did. We had a lovely fireplace in the living room, and in front of the fireplace, we took bricks and we built a small little pond, 2 bricks high. You use a shower curtain, then another brick on top, fill it with water, go across to the old Sig-Up house, get some rocks, put them in, those are the islands, go downtown when we used to have one, and you could get some goldfish. And so we had a goldfish pond. We had a little sisters group, Phi Epsilon Phi Sisters Incorporated, and the little sisters helped us, much like a homecoming float, build palm trees, with the crepe paper and chicken wire in the living room. And then we took all the racks out of the oven and went out and back and created our own little grill. We made a wonderful grill out there and we did pork and chicken for everybody all night long. But we needed something else. And so we thought, besides the music and lovely people, we needed some signature event. So we went over back to the Sig-Up house and brought over big rocks this time and built this lovely rock in extravagance in the backyard and brought out an electric light and put a colored light on it. Good old 120 watt back then. I mean, it was sucking. I was cooking everything. Brought the garden hose from around the side and got it up there, and we had this wonderful, cascading, beautiful waterfall coming down in front of the house. About 3 people came out back to help us cook or to see what we were doing. We enjoyed this lovely fireplace. There's this waterfall. We all went in after the cooking, and we partied way into the lake. Got up the next morning, sometime near noon, somebody said, "Anybody turn off the water?" Went out in the backyard, we were ankle deep. Luckily, the curb kept it in, so it wasn't in the street. No, it was all in the backyard of the Manor House. And so we very quietly turned off the water and hoped that it would drain over the course of the day, and went back in. And that was the very first ZB Tahiti, of which is now some 45 ZB Tahitis later. Thank you.
My name is Bill Goldsboro, class of '65. David, you were a little bit wrong. For the first 2 years, you couldn't have electric blankets up in that third floor. And George Bomer made sure that we weren't gonna have electric blankets. So I've got two short stories for you. Going back to the swimming team, I was a diver on the team. In our class, to graduate, we had to pass a swimming test. And it showed up on your transcript, pass swimming test such and such a day. So everybody from our class did that during orientation week of our freshman year, right, Karen?
Yep.
Almost everybody. So it's my senior year in the fall. We went from semesters our freshman year to the 3-3 plan our sophomore year. This was the fall term of my senior year. Coach Andrew comes up and says, Lori needs to take her swimming test. This is Lori Goldstein, who sat next to me in chapel, little Jewish girl from New York, 4'10", petrified of the water. Now, I grew up in a swimming pool. My brother and I, we were 2 blocks from a pool in our hometown of Elmhurst. In the summertime, every day we were at the pool. I taught myself to dive. So I love the water. I wasn't afraid of it, but she was petrified. And I understood that. And the coach said, keep an eye on her, she's gonna take her test. So to take this test, you could do any stroke. So what is she gonna do? What stroke is she?
Backstroke.
Backstroke, right. She's gonna do the back, because her head's out of water. You can start at either end. Now the backstroke is the only stroke you start in the water. If you ever went to a swim meet, all the other contests, you dive off into the water. Backstroke, you're in the water. So where's she gonna start? Deep end or shallow end?
Shallow.
Shallow. Which end should she start at?
Deep.
Deep, yes. You kick off and you get a third of the way down the pool. So she starts. And coach said, keep an eye on, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm very comfortable in the water. I'm not afraid of it at all. I could hold her up for 20 seconds, but then I gotta come up for air. I was hoping nothing was gonna happen to this gal. So she starts swimming and she's going so slow. She get about a third of the way down and suddenly her suit starts a little lower, a little lower. Now this was before the word wardrobe malfunction came out. But I'm thinking, oh my God, not only do I have to keep an eye until she doesn't sink, but something else could be happening here. It could make me very uncomfortable. I swear, it took this woman 75 feet, 25, it took her 4 minutes. I did it in 15 seconds. She made it, she came out, she was okay, and she was scared to death. I felt awful for her. She was 4'10", she was a short girl, small girl. She wasn't small everywhere, and let's just leave it at that. So the second story,
Buoyancy.
the second story is, one question?
No, I just said,
So the second
maybe she
story.
had some buoyancy.
You're right, Andy. So when we were freshmen, as pledges, we decided to invite all of the sorority pledge classes over. There were 4 sororities on campus, Alpha C, KDs, campus, Pi Phis. So the head of our pledge class, Chuck Goodell, we had photographs of all these young women, and so he memorized their names from their photos, so when they came over, he could identify them one by one by one. But he wasn't really very good at it. And the KDs came over, and Chuck starts out and says, "We're so happy to have the Kappas here." Oh my God, the groans in that room. So this was the second time, he got fired. We fired Chuck, and one of my roommates, Jim Greenwald, took over, and Jim was really good. So it was either the Kappas or the Pi Phis came over, and he's just nailing one, you know, introducing them, knowing their names, impressing the young women, until the very end. The last gal, he didn't know, he went blank. Well, it wasn't a student, it was an advisor. It was the wife of the speech professor who was 24 years old, and there's no way he was gonna know her name.
Yeah.
So, you know, you win some, you lose some. Thank you very much.
I wanna go to the next level with the gymnasium. So I'm Craig Dahlquist, class of '78. So, most of you were here before me. Bobby Wall. All right.
Yeah.
Man, you know the name?
Speedball.
Yep. So back to the gym. When we were here, you know, trying to learn how to figure out how to run track, indoor track meets, etc. Yes, we knew about the dirt cinder track in the basement. But what else was down there? Am I wrong or right? Ralph, you're gonna know all this. The ROTC guys used to shoot down there. Archery down there, right? But the first day I realized we were actually gonna practice on about a 19 lap to a mile track where you bank. We go down there, track's not ready yet. It's dusty down there. Who's down there? Bobby Wall with the hose and one of those little 12 by 12 stampers, and he's going, watering, going on, he's about 2/3 of the way done. We had to wait another half an hour for him to finish packing the dirt. So we could go down there and chew it all up, and just breathe dirt and just completely destroy ourselves as far as athletes, blisters on the feet. Where I want to go with this, fast forward to 2 years later. So if everybody remembers when Haldeman Teesman was built, and they cut the track off, and it became a 300-meter horseshoe cinder track, right? Football stands around the west side, etc. So we would work out there, but it was in the springtime, and we didn't want to go all the way to Sunny Lane to track. Bobby Wall. Think about this. Everybody know what a rambler is? Remember the front door opened this way, the back door opened that way? Bobby Wall, in the spring, just for us guys who are a bunch of mediocre athletes, took his car, opened the door, and one wheel width at a time drove around that track to pack it down so we could have track practice. You want to talk about the quintessential Monmouth College person, 126-pound running back, backfield guy, defensive end, everything. This guy came, where did he come from? Tennessee, am I right? Ralph, help me out.
I thought it was Southern Illinois.
Somewhere down there, he comes to Monmouth, and he dedicated himself. This was, 15, 20 years after the guy graduated. So if you ever knew of or saw Bobby Wall and never saw the things he did that were beyond and well beyond, it's like the chemistry professor who stays late to clean up the lab because the custodians were too busy. This guy did everything. One of those images that I thought I'd share, because that's what Bobby Wall did for a bunch of guys who were trying to finish 9th place in the conference meet. Not first, 9th place. But I just wanted to share that because it just, when you mentioned the indoor, I thought, I gotta bring this guy up. Yeah, good song.
Super.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
I've got a little different tale to tell, I think, for most of them. I'm Wendell Shaw, I graduated in '67. Put up with a lot of these guys, I had to get them out of bed. Blackness was the worst.
Who?
Nickname was Blackness.
Bob Finch.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Anyway, so we're in the new SIG house, or the now decrepit building up there. It's football season, we're getting ready to play Knox. And one of the guys in the house came by, he says, you know, we ought to go over to Knox and burn them in the football field. And we're all going, nah. But the gauntlet had been dropped. And so finally we got about 4 guys together, figured out how to get some gas, tried diesel fuel, that wouldn't work, you couldn't get it to ignite. So we got some gas, went over there, so as far as one guy was from Galesburg, so he knew his way around town, knew how to get around the far side of the football field and keep us out of sight. Another guy was just driving, he's written a couple of books since then. The driver actually died of cancer. And Dave Jackson is a veterinarian up in Northern Illinois for his whole career, and also a chemistry major a couple years behind me. So Dave and I get down there, we get a gallon of gas or a bucket of gas, climb over the berm down there around the field, go over the corner of the football. Well, let's start. Well, okay, we'll go this way. So we get out there, pour the gas out in an end out there. I give Dave the match. He lights it, almost takes his arm off. We found out that gas does burn really well, really fast. So we run back out, the car's been sort of thing there. We hop in it, gone, and we're good. Next morning on the newspaper in Galesburg is vandals try to burn down the new art center in Knox College. We were a little bit nervous there. But anyway, so we got picked up and we're getting ready to come back to Mama, and I look at my watch and it's midnight. It's actually a minute after midnight. I'm legal. It's my birthday. So we went by a liquor store, got a 6-pack, and we drank our beer on the way back to campus and had a good night. The other punchline was Reichow was, I think, was his first or second year coach. And he said, this is the first time anybody showed any interest in supporting the whole damn campus. He was with us.
I wasn't prepared to do this. Not
But
being a
he's got
public
a notebook.
Chapter 1, at the urging of our current head of physics department, I was putting together some of my stories from over the last 3 years. So they're in a folder over in the room with the yearbooks if you want to take a moment to read them. And if you don't, I won't bore you with them now. Except for this room. I have a history with this. I've been in this room. This will be the 4th time. The first 3 were to take pictures of the ATOs for the yearbook, and this time makes 4. But it's also historic because my sophomore year, I was a floor counselor in Fulton Hall. I was not mature enough for that job, and there were a few upperclassmen in the building, one of which was in a room directly level with the front of this building.
Sure.
And our newspaper boy, who used to come around every day to deliver the newspapers, had a really good BB gun. So he would, every time the ATOs would have a party, we would borrow his BB gun. And the rules were real simple. You could shoot until you missed 3 times, and then somebody else got a shot. And so a group of God's Divine Independents would go to his room, and they had a crest right outside the door with those large Christmas tree bulbs. And in the winter, they'd come out on the porch to smoke. The snow's on the ground, and they'd be wondering why the lights on their crest kept exploding. My other little story has to do with another room that you can see at the end of Fulton Hall when I was a floor counselor. There was a suite there of 4 rooms, and a couple of the kids came down to me as a floor counselor and said, our friend keeps turning up his record player too loud. He's really nice, we've asked him to turn it down, he does,
next day it's up loud again. Is there something you can do about it? And I said, well, next time he's away, bring me his record player. So being a physics major, I installed a little volume control behind the grill. And I told him, use a little screwdriver and turn it down very slowly over a period of a week till it's down to a level where you can stand it. A week later they said, it's fine. The last week of school, the owner of the record player comes down to me and says, Mr. Schaefer, I've got my brother's record player and it's gotten really weak and he's gonna kill me when I bring it home. Can you fix it? I said, sure, leave it off, leave it here. I just took a screwdriver, turned the volume control off, didn't bother to take it out. And he was sort of a rich snobbish kid, so I charged him $5.
John Dahl's got radio station stories.
I have one that I can tell
All
you,
right.
ZBTs.
Uh-oh.
Only one?
Yeah.
On the way out, there's none.
Oh, thank you very much. I don't think that one made it in. John Dahl, class of 1975, managed the radio station 1974 to 1975 in the February of 1974. So it probably was a ZB Tahiti event. I don't know. I didn't have, this is the first time I've heard that, Andy. But the ZBTs came up to me and said, we are going to have a beach party. Now next to Stockdale were the tennis courts. And there was a slope, a hill, and they were gonna put beach blankets out on the hill and show up in their swim trunks and have a beach party. Could you play some Beach Boy music on the radio? That seemed like a reasonable request. So I did. I went down, turned on we were on a tape system at that time. I took the tape down and I put in some Beach Boy music. Went back upstairs to watch. Craig, you probably were in that group, maybe. Steve Sheets was, I'm sure. The ATOs got wind of it. So what do you think the ATOs did?
Crash the party.
They had buckets of ice water. And they chased those ZBTs off the hill. I don't know what happened, but the whole cafeteria was up glued against the window watching this whole scene unfold. That might be one of my favorite radio station stories. So, and involved ZBTs, which are represented, well represented today. Thank you.
Bobby Wall's story reminds me of Miss Best.
Oh my God.
Yeah, beast.
Anybody recall Miss Best?
Of course.
Well,
She took
Miss,
attendance.
for you younger folks, at one time we had required chapel
Yeah.
here at Mount. And 3 times a week you had to attend Monday, Friday, Wednesday, Friday chapel. And one was always a religious service. And Miss Best would stand up there and you had an assigned seat, as Bill pointed out. And she would take attendance, and if you missed, I forget how many you missed, you wouldn't graduate. And some people had refused to go to some of these things. So I think when our sophomore year, a bunch of us went to the dean and said, we can't keep requiring people to go into religious service. So we finally got to the change, so we had a tag system. So if you had to go to maybe 15 things each semester, and you could miss every religious service as long as you went to a play or went to a concert. And so I don't know how, but it turned out, we thought we were so smart, we forced the administration to do what we wanted. Turned out the administration figured out they had so many students they could no longer use the chapel for all of the students. So they used us as a foil to make that work out for them. Now, did that system stay around for a while, do you know?
It was gone by 71.
Okay, so Bobby Wall, I played freshman basketball, and Bobby Wall didn't know me from Adam. He knew me because all the guys he recruited were from around high schools around here, and I was from Virginia, so he didn't know me. So I was known as Hey You. And he called me Hey You the whole time. And he played me just a little bit, didn't matter. But after grades came out the first semester, all of a sudden these 19-member basketball team, it was down to about 9 or 8 players. And guess who was still on the team? I was on it, so he had to use me. So one time we were playing Western Illinois down in, where is it, Jackson? Macomb. We were playing, and of course they had a really good player, and I wasn't playing at that point, and he was just killing us. And so he said, Bicklin, get in there and stop that guy. And I'm thinking, I can stop that guy, he's too quick. So I got there, and he gets there, and I'm standing there guarding him, and he fakes this way, then he fakes that way, then he goes straight ahead, and he runs into me and charges. Bobby Bull and the whole team's going, hey, Bicklin, you're so good. It turned out that I was so slow, I hadn't picked up one of his fakes, and I was still standing still in front of that was Bobby Bull.
I don't know about this.
Get your pillows out.
Yep. A lot of trivia.
Yes.
I showed up in the fall of 1959. And of course, no, that's, yeah. I started in 60, I graduated in 64. So that's right. First time I was in this building, I got to sleep in the attic with the windows open and froze. But I was in Graham freshman year, and they had all of the freshmen up on the second floor, and down on the first floor they had all the transfers. And that's where the house mother, who's a hot blonde, and whose husband was a science professor, and he went to class every day, and then she entertained the first floor.
Biology class.
Nothing ever came of that. Somebody talked about the track. Well, when I was a freshman, there were mats down on the rifle range that you could go so you could lay in comfort rather than on the dirt and shoot. Well, they caught some people down there doing what most of us.
We're shooting rifles, huh? Yeah.
And of course, they got kicked out of school. But they never did find out about the house mother. Probably, they talked about the swimming pool. I was a swimmer. We got here, we looked at the records, we thought, oh, how are we gonna do that? And we broke them by 30, 40, 50 seconds in every event. We thought we were world beaters until we found out otherwise. And we definitely thought, of course, that ceiling was a real advantage. There was a guy when I forget what year I was in, but he was an upperclassman and he was a diver, his name was Demas. And he used to go out and put his belly on the ceiling.
He was good.
He was good. I fell off the board a few times to pick up 3 points. It was better than coming in fourth in the IM or fourth in the, in something. So wherever I could get the most points, was my event for the meet. I did have some pool records, so I did a few things right along the way. And now those times wouldn't even make the top 10 in the women's records. Shows you how things have changed. I came back and coached swimming in 70. And they still had the same diving board, the same ceiling. I got rid of the diving board. I put one of those flexible boards.
He's so mean.
And I brought a diver from Galesburg that worked for me summers, and he dove off that board. He also dove 3 meter when we went to schools with 3 meter boards. He was brave. He didn't mind splatting. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, splatting off a 3 meter board hurts. Took me years to go off a 3 meter board because I was scared to death of heights. But finally, pride and position made me have to go off. And of course, I splatted. I went back up, did it again, did it right. It didn't feel so bad, and I've been going off those high boards ever since. School taught me a lot. I was a history major here. I got out of school, I got lucky. I got to teach history for a few years. I actually was founding faculty at Sandburg in Galesburg. But one of the things I learned along the way was that Monmouth gave me an education. They gave me a darn good education. And I actually did something for it occasionally. I was 473 and a half in my high school graduating class. And I got early admission here. And I have never, ever felt anything but gratitude for Monmouth for recognizing my SAT scores and everything else about me and admitting me early and giving me a chance to swim and everything here. I went to graduate school. I played intramurals. I was supposed to be the first one to fail out because I spent all my time in the afternoons either chasing my honey or chasing the ball around somewhere. I was the first one to graduate. And I plugged along and plugged along. I now have a PhD and 2 professional designations in areas that I didn't have the academics in. It's all worked hard at it. But that's what Monmouth teaches you. You do stuff here in your classes that they don't do at the state university. I went to Illinois and I found out I had no trouble competing with their native students because I've done it all here before. And they've been taking multiple choices tests as juniors and seniors, and then they go to graduate school and all of a sudden they got it right, both in tests and in papers and so on. Mama taught me something. And you didn't have to do a lot, you just had to do something. I remember as a freshman in Graham, I was up there on the upper floor and study time came after supper. I went down, we watched a couple TV shows in the rec room, and then we went out to do our homework. I could get mine done in an hour, maybe 2 hours, because I put my nose to the grindstone and did it. Most of the people on the floor, they came out of their room, they walk down the hall, they go into Johnny's room and talk to Johnny, come out of Johnny's room, go down and talk to David, go out of David's room and go talk to somebody else. Then somebody from the fraternity comes by and they go do something else, and they keep flipping into their room for 5 minutes, and so they're up to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning studying because they can't put their nose to the grindstone and do what they gotta do. And let me tell you, when you're a swimmer, we swam 5 hours a day. That's a lot of chlorinated water or brominated water to have in your eyes. You can't keep your eyes open after about 8 o'clock at night. All you want to do is go to sleep. And my roommate, he had real weights. He didn't have the cement on the end of the pipe. clank, 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 clank. And I'm trying to sleep. And if that didn't do it, he grabbed his guitar. Ba-lum, ba-lum, ba-lum. And then, of course, we had the hoot nanny in the room because he had the guitar. So,
Yeah, that's a word.
you know, I ended up living off campus and he had a nice, peaceful room.
Yeah.
And then I could go visit my teammates and I'd go up the stairs to their apartment. And the beer bottles, all the lids would be popping because they made beer that night. And they didn't do it right, so it was exploding. And I go up and I tutored them and I helped them. I was in a bagpipe band. I swam. I had track. Yeah, I did services twice a month down at the church. They had to let me skip my religion classes and get licensed as a minister so I could do the services when the priest wasn't there. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of stuff, and I still got through school, and I think I only missed the honors by about 0.02 of a point. And that's not bad from having been 473 and a half. I always something. And that's why I'm here. I come to this Golden Scots thing every year. Now I'll cheat and admit I do it because I got married a couple of years ago and her family's in Ottumwa, Iowa. And we drive from Florida, it takes us 3 days to get here. We're here 3 days. We go to Ottumwa for 3 days and then it's 3 days home. And it's worth it. And then I come at homecoming. Because I got to see those Scots roll.
There you go.
Yeah. Got suspended, and the football team got suspended, and everything. The lawyer who was representing the back that the conference was unhappy about, I'm godfather for his kids. His dad was my boss at Sandburg. He was president of the college. I loved it what they did to the guy from the conference. They run him all over the country. They give him a subpoena for a deposition. Once, in Chicago this time, next week Peoria, the next time the Quad Cities, so he can never use the same reservations twice. I mean, and they reveled in that. I mean, you got to make people pay when they do bad things. And the conference treated Monmouth terribly. And I have to admit, the college didn't support Reichow enough, because he didn't do anything wrong. I shared an office with Mary Fleming right across from his. I know what he was going through. But anyway. Oh, the last thing, the best thing being an athlete was when you won. You went to the heating plant and pulled the horn and went, toot, toot!
Well, we've never had that, but toot, toot! Basketball.
Your stories are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and for coming out tonight, and I look forward to connecting with you throughout the weekend. So let's give all of our storytellers.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. We have still lots of beverages back in Bowers and lots of stories to tell. So if you'd like to go back there, we'd love to see you at the social. So.
Okay, good. One more thing. Shameless plug. I have a special deal just for you on my book. I have a trunk full of them. So if anybody is interested in my play, 6 one-act plays for community theaters, it is recently published, and I would love to share it with you. Special deal for just for you.